Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Connecticut DOT's Capital Plan Overview and Information Session. To kick us off this evening is Deputy Commissioner Garrett Ucalito. And just as a reminder, throughout the session, please use the Q&A function to submit any feedback, comments, or questions, and we will get to those at the end of the presentation. So Garrett, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Shannon. Good evening, everyone. My name is Garrett Ucalito. I'm Deputy Commissioner here at Connecticut Department of Transportation. So thank you for joining us tonight, or if you're watching this after the fact, thank you for tuning in to the recording. So the purpose of our meeting tonight is to solicit your feedback, solicit public feedback on our, as we, the department, are beginning the process of preparing our capital plan, 5-year capital plan for fiscal years 2023 to 2027. We have an existing capital plan that's in effect today, and it's published on our website. And each year we do update our capital plan to reflect the next year of the 5-year cycle. So we wanted to make sure to have an opportunity for the public to provide feedback to us tonight and throughout the next few months on issues that you think are important for us to consider as we are in the process of developing that new capital plan that we hope to publish in the next few months. So this evening, you're going to learn a lot about how a capital plan is put together. We also have a pre-recording on that that's really helpful to watch if you, want to take a look at the nuts and bolts of the put together of a capital plan. But this evening, we're also going to talk about all the new federal policy developments that have taken effect. It's now 1 year and 1 day since the new Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act became law. So we'll be talking about those new programs and funding opportunities, and then ongoing projects that are in our existing capital plan and that we expect to highlight in the upcoming capital plan that we are going to be preparing over the next few months. So we have a great team here to talk to you tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to Jim Fallon, who's our Assistant Chief Engineer, who's going to lead tonight's discussion.
Okay, so thank you, Garrett, and certainly appreciate the opportunity to share some information with folks. Like Garrett talked about, there is a recording from February, so I would certainly encourage people, if they're so interested, to take a look at that. Really, the purpose tonight is for us to go through some general overview and to talk about some developments on the federal side since the passage of the IIJA, like Garrett said, about a year ago, and then to talk about some programs of interest, and then we'll have a Q&A section, which we're certainly looking for your feedback. So this gives you general areas that we'll be covering, and we'll go from there. So starting off just in terms of a timeline of federal legislation and guidance, the IIJA bill was passed about a year ago, in November 15, 2021. We were fortunate enough that the appropriations were passed about 6 months later, in March of 2022. That provided the funding and the cash to implement the programs that were outlined in the IIJA in the bill. So the IIJA in the bill is a 5-year reauthorization, and then we got the 2022 appropriations in March. Since March, there's been a number of funding opportunities, grant opportunities. I'll give you a little bit of an overview of all the discretionary grant programs that are included within IIJA and bill. And then in terms of FY23, which started in October, we're expecting to get the appropriations that has to get through Congress, and obviously there's a little bit of uncertainty working through the Congress and things like that, but we expect that our FY23 appropriations will happen sometime in the spring. From a state standpoint, like Garrett mentioned, we did provide an interim capital plan, and we had a public meeting in February of 2022. We issued a revised capital plan for 22 through 26 in August, and now we're looking forward towards development and getting some feedback and thinking about projects and programs that should be in the FY23 through 27 capital plan. So a little bit of an overview of IIJA and bill. It is a reauthorization program. It is for 5 years. It is a long-term funding program. It does provide a level of stability. We know the funds that are coming. IIJA and bill are similar to other reauthorizations that you might be familiar with, such as FAST Act and Safety Lou. One key component, which I'll talk a little bit more in detail, is the $100 billion in competitive grant opportunities that are available through the reauthorization. So certainly from a state standpoint, we want to be able to take advantage of those competitive grant opportunities. And then in general, it means a $5.3 billion increase over the 5 years from the previous authorization. A little bit more detail in terms of that $5 billion in 2021. Our approximate total federal formula funding for FHWA and FTA was approximately $750 million. You can see that in the highlight. Basically, we're estimating that about $1.1 billion of federal formula funding will be provided to the department over the next 4 years. We're through 2022, we're into 2023. And like I said, this is a long-term stable funding solution. And as probably not a surprise to a lot of you, obviously there is some increases in materials and supplies and labor and things like that. So even though there is an increase, a little bit of that is affected by those increasing costs, but we're certainly appreciative of the additional funding that's been provided. A little bit more detail about the federal grants and the discretionary program. So like I said, in FY22, that was a fairly significant burden and a lot of work that the federal government needed to do in order to get those notice of funding opportunities out. FY22, certainly there was a number of opportunities we expected as we go into FY23 that's really going to ramp up. From a department standpoint and really from a state standpoint, not only for the COGs, some of the regions, some of the municipalities, there was a lot of grant opportunities that people are taking advantage of, which is really fantastic. That this is a plus to the federal formula funding, and using some of these grant opportunities means funds and improvements that are coming to our state as opposed to other states. So we certainly are working with the municipalities and with the COGs and also from a statewide standpoint of taking advantage of these. Talking a little bit about organizational improvements that we've done on the state side. The bill was a little bit different in some of the policy areas and things of that nature. So we are reacting to that. We have a whole, and a number of these groups are in policy and planning. So we have stood up, or policy and planning has stood up a grants and socioeconomic unit, sustainability and resiliency unit, as well as policy and intergovernmental affairs. That is really to react to some of the changes that are within the bill, and then to also enhance our communication and interaction with the public. We've also stood up a capital program management unit where we had some of those functions that were throughout the department, and we're really trying to centralize those to make sure that we monitor our progress and our projects and try to hit some of our critical milestones. A little bit about transportation documents and how they fit together. Some of these may be familiar to you. We do a statewide long-range plan. That's the last one was 2018 through 2050. At the regional level, there's Metropolitan Transportation Plans, or MTPs. We also have as planning documents the TIP and the STIP. And then there's a number of corridor studies that are ongoing in the various areas of the state. There's also planning and environmental linkages, planning studies, PELs. which you may also be familiar with. And then in the end, we have a capital plan, which is really a implementation document. It's an execution document, and it has the projects that are typically already underway, and then also in the outer years, some projects that are planned and are also under design. So I'm going to talk a little bit about project identification and selection. We got into pretty good detail on this in the February presentation, so I'm just going to hit the highlights for people to be aware of. So in terms of what we call the roadmap to the capital plan, this is an overview of the project development. And this is really for the initiation of a project. So there's a number of steps. We want to identify the project and get into the purpose and need. We categorize, we apply metrics, we solicit feedback, and then we program. And then those projects end up within the capital plan. So that's a number of steps in the development and in the presentation of those projects and programs before it ends up in the capital plan. So going through each one of those. So first step is to identify. We talk about potential projects and initiatives, and this could come from a variety of different paths, I think would be the best way of putting it. So it could come from the TAMP in terms of asset management and infrastructure needs. It could come from planning documents. Sometimes it's from a data-driven analysis. Actually, many times it's from a data-driven analysis. So it could be from a high-frequency crash location, from the Connecticut repository of accidents, and then also state of good repair, and then also trying to address some geometrics, as well as municipal and COG and plan and other planning studies. So that's to identify it, and then we want to come up with a purpose and need, and that is, what is the issue that needs to be addressed, and then we think about the outcome that we're trying to achieve. Step two, typically we categorize projects, and depending on how they get categorized, there will be a more robust development and evaluation. Certainly major programs and initiatives, sometimes we go through our Pell process where we look at the various alternatives and options and things like that. Some of the infrastructure projects will more might be a clearly defined solution, and they get a little quicker through this step of the process. Step three, we always apply metrics, mobility for all users using a variety of different modes is a metric that we're looking at. We want to improve safety. Safety is always a criteria and a priority for us. Infrastructure condition and asset management is also another primary consideration. And then there's also freight movement throughout the state, making sure that we're able to efficiently move our goods and services, as well as economic development for the state. Fourth step, typically after we get through one through three, and again, this is prior to the regular coordination that happens on a project. So this is still in the development phase. We do solicit feedback that can happen in a lot of different ways in terms of conversations with elected officials and stakeholders and public meetings. Some of you may be familiar with a PAC, a Project Advisory Committee. A lot of our PELs, such as the Greater Hartford Mobility Study on the 84 on the Mixed Master. We also have PACs where those are local area stakeholders, and it could be a mix of all different groups, community groups, businesses, et cetera, neighborhoods, neighborhood groups, and really try to get a flavor for what does the community think is the issue and what are possible solutions. So that's step four, solicit feedback. And then we program, and again, this goes into FTA funding, the possibility of FRA funds, federal highway funds. Each one of the funding sources can have specific eligibility criteria and also the availability of funding and roadway classification and things of that nature. So those all need to be taken into account in order to program the projects before they get into the capital plan. And then they're in the plan. So after we get through step 1 through 5, projects are usually initiated, and then we're into the capital plan. So just some representative projects, and again, this is not intended to be all encompassing, but on the public transportation side, we do have some projects such as Move New Haven, some elements of the Time for CT program, which you may have heard of, in order to accomplish some speed improvements and some travel savings on the New Haven line. We're always doing equipment purchases and upgrades. And then we also have a number of facility improvements, as well as electrification and things of that nature. And then also some improvements along the Waterbury line. So those are public transportation improvements that are in the capital plan and then being added or enhanced as we go along. And then on the highway bridge side, typically we have a number of regular recurring annual programs. So whether it's resurfacing, or we have some projects within the Highway Safety Improvement Program, that's about a $40 million annual program. We do ADA transition and some of those things within the highway bridge side. So those are annual programs. And then just a highlight of some of the major projects that are currently in the plan, the 161 exit 74 down in East Lyme, that's going to be is advertised and will be starting construction next spring, as well as ongoing work to the Gold Star Bridge. And then we have a series of projects that are going to provide operational improvements in the 91, 691, 15 area. In addition to the projects I went through before, which are ongoing and active, there's a number of projects that are also showing up in the outer years, and some of these are also occurring in years 1 and 2. So the Walk Bridge, we're continuing to move forward with. The Greater Hartford Mobility Study, the Pels, the 84 new mix. Like I said, there's projects that are active that will be, I think, in 2024, some of the initial phases of the Time for CT. And then we're also implementing some future phases of the Hartford line, some of the double tracking in some of the areas, as well as Move New Haven. So there's a number of future capital large projects. Route 7 and 15 in Norwalk is another one. And then also we're doing a Pell on Bridge 32 down in Stamford. So those are just some of the highlights. These are either going to start already do have a presence in the capital plan, or they will. They're ongoing studies, and then they will end up in the capital plan in the near future. Just wanted to do a little bit of a highlight, like Garrett was talking about, of developments on the federal side. Some of these you may be pretty familiar with, so I'll just run through these fairly quickly. In terms of climate and resilience, there is a NEVI program. The department did submit our plan. It was approved in September 22. Jen Riley from Policy and Planning been leading the charge on that. I would encourage you to read through the plan if that is an area that you're interested in. And these are programs within IIJA and bill. Carbon reduction program is $79 million over 5 years, and really getting to a carbon reduction, some basic projects that might be considered within that program, traffic signal projects, LED illumination, things like that. So we're continuing to develop projects within the carbon reduction program. And both the carbon reduction program as well as Protect do require plans to be developed that demonstrate how we are going to utilize the funds over the next couple of years. So also similar to the NEVI, it does require a plan to be developed. And then the Protect is for resiliency and so whether we're increasing, raising our roadways or doing some culvert improvements, and there's a number of things that can fit into the Protect program. In terms of safety and complete streets, safety is always a critical nature of most any project that we do. And so certainly our strategic highway safety plan, as well as Vision Zero, has made a number of recommendations in terms of how we can handle safety. Complete streets, the department does have a policy in terms of complete streets. That's also an effort that sort of works its way into a number of our projects regardless. And then community connectivity is a statewide program that has been, I have some more detail on a later slide. Wrong way driving, many of you, certainly an issue that we are trying to address in a great partnership with our Bureau of Highway Operations, and we've been able to quickly make some improvements and to try to address this. So there was a press event in middle of October, and so we're really trying to utilize the state funding, $20 million of bond funding, and trying to make some real improvements, and to do so in a quick fashion, because many of these incidents end up in very serious issues. So we want to try to address that as fast as we can. Safe Streets and Roads for All is a grant program. It's a smaller program. It's typically for the MPOs and the local governments. We had a lot of interest in this. The applications were due middle of September. So we certainly appreciate everybody's efforts, and we did submit, or within the state, we submitted 10 applications for planning and construction. So that's really good, and appreciate everyone's efforts in trying to move some of these projects forward as well. Bridge Formula Program, certainly infrastructure condition and bridges is a significant issue. The IIJA and the bill did provide $120 million of federal funding over the next 5 years. So we have a whole program that's set up over the next three to 4 years to continue to utilize this money, and it's certainly well needed, and we appreciate that as well. There is a small federal rural surface transportation grant, and so people, this is more of a local grant program as well, and to hopefully improve some connectivity and improve safety out in some of the rural areas of the state, where some of the needs are a little bit different from maybe some of the urban centers. So that's a federal grant program through IIJA and bill. And then on the state side, we also recognize that this was, we had the LOTSIP program, which provides funding statewide, but we thought that there was potentially a little bit of a gap on the rural side. So we did announce on October 7th that we're standing up a Transportation Rural Improvement Program, TRIP for short. And then I think applications are due by early next year. I think it's February or April of 2023, but certainly there was a press announcement relative to that, and encourage people to take a look at that if you're so interested. Local funding programs had a lot of success with the Community Connectivity Grant Program. That's a state program, been awarded to 107 municipalities and 38 million. So we will continue that. Actually, we're enhancing that program. So we certainly want people to be aware of that. And then on the local side, there's the local bridge program with LOTSIP, Town Aid Road, and there's a set aside for some traffic signal improvements within the CNAC program, as well as multi-use trails investments. So those are regular, recurring local programs that people can take advantage of, municipalities and things of that nature. So in terms of available resources, because it's always sometimes difficult to be informed and be up to speed as best that you can. So I think Shannon is going to put these in the chat so that people have access to these. So I would certainly encourage you to poke around. The bipartisan infrastructure law with the federal highway and also with FTA has a lot of good information. And I'll just offer, we're always willing to point people in the right direction and try to help you along as well. So links to the capital plan, both archive plans as well as the interim plan and then the update plan from August 22 are also available. They have project listings. By scanning through those, you can get a pretty good idea of work that's ongoing and things that you might be interested in. So that concludes the overview. Certainly like I said, I encourage you to look through previous versions of the capital plan. This is the start of our process, and you know, the capital plan is a little bit of an implementation document, but we're certainly always looking for people to provide feedback. We will provide you with this public comment form. You can also send us in comments and questions through the email address, dot.capitalplan@ct.gov. And I would just remind you as well that depending on where you're located, that some of these major infrastructure projects, such in the Pels and things like that, there's regular outreach going on. So I would certainly encourage you to go to some of those meetings and to get engaged and get informed and tell us what you're thinking.